Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. I'll be sharing with you how I made a maternity pant using a non-stretch Ankara wax print. I'll be using my mannequin for illustration. The mannequin is going to be our model for this project. I have padded her up to the best weight possible and I'll go ahead and take the measurements. You will need 3 elastics or ropes tied exactly as shown in the video, and on these lines you will take your measurements. If you're making for yourself or for your client, you will need a fitted top with side seams to help you take the measurement of your bump from side to side. On the first and second white rope, I'll take the measurement from side to side. The first rope is the waistline, the second rope is the biggest part of the bump, and the third rope, which is the green rope, is the beginning of the bump. On each line, I will measure the full circumference of the waist, the bump, and the hip, making sure my tape follows the line of the rope. The rope on the waistline should be tied the way you want the waistline of your trouser to turn out. Now I will measure the height of our bump, but first I will measure the distance from the first rope to the second rope. This measurement will serve as a guide to help us get the extension to accommodate our bump. I'll take the tape all the way down to measure the total height of the bump. Bump, not bumble. Then you go ahead and take the rest of the measurement for your pant. You will need a pant block for this project. I have drafted a pant block for my mannequin using her old waist measurement before she became pregnant. If you're making for a client, you will need her old waist measurement before pregnancy and the measurement of her present hip to draft a pant block. And the same applies if you're making for yourself. I'll go ahead and trim down this seam allowance, or you can trim it off completely to avoid any confusion, but I'll trim it down for this. So we will start with the front block because that's where all the whole drama is. We will be using the slash and spread method to create room for our bump. I will be slashing and spreading by 2 inches. So on the hip line, I will go up 2 inches. I will go up again 2 inches, and on the waistline from the side seam, I will come in by 2 inches, and this point I will be connecting them with a curved line. I have a tutorial on my channel on how to draft a perfect pant block with no crotch issues. I use the same method to draft this pant block for the mannequin. The link to that video will be in the description. I'll slash in through this line but not through, bring in a new fresh paper to help me spread the pieces at 2 inches. Once that is done, I'll secure them with tapes and connect the lines. From my waistline, I'll come down by 2.5 inches as indicated in the picture. And in the front here, I'll mark the distance between the first and the second line as indicated in the picture. These 2 points will serve as a guide to place the half measurement of our side-to-side bump. On our waistline, I'll go up 1.5 inch to make up for the space as a result of the spreading. From that extended 1.5 point on the waistline, I'll place half the side-to-side waist measurement plus 1 inch dart. I measured the bump height from the slash and spread and we have 12.5. Our bump height is 13.5. This is why it's important to take this measurement to get the right room for your bump. I'll go ahead and connect these points with a broken slide curve. On this new curved line, I'll place the measurement of the height of the bump and I'll make a point there. I'll connect these 2 points to the 1.5 inch I extended up from the waistline. I'll report the dart from our back pattern to the front, and the length of my front dart is 4 inches. From my back pattern, my dart is at 4.5 inches. So I marked 4.5 inches on my waistline and at the point where my dart stopped. And I placed ½ inch on both sides of this line. So if I stitch this dart, I will have 4 inches from my center front to where my dart starts. I hope this is clear. I'll close in my dart, cross-check all measurements, after which I'll go in and validate the lines and add seam allowances. Our front pattern is done. I'm just marking in those important points and then we'll move to the back pattern. On the back pattern, we will make some adjustments on the waistline. I have taped in a new paper to make these adjustments, after which I will redraw my dart legs. On the waistline, we will add 1.5 inches as we added on the front pattern, and at the crotch height, we will add 1 inch. I will connect these points and report the old waist measurement on the new line and redraw my darts. The length of my dart at the back is 5.5 inches. I will blend in all the lines. I'll close in my dart, cross-check all measurements, and I'll validate my lines and add seam allowance. We have our front and our back block half ready. I'm just marking some important points, after which we do the final modification. Here I'm indicating the original waistline. I aligned both patterns at the original waistline, and as you can see, there's a big space at the top. The waistline does not have a uniform flow. If you go ahead and sew this pant without making this modification, this is what the waistline of your pant will look like. In order to avoid this is what you will do. This correction has to be done between the two darts. I have taped in a new fresh paper between the dart leg of the front and the back pattern. With my rulers, I will go in and draw a line that runs smoothly from the back to the front. I'll close in my darts and continue blending the lines until I get a smooth line running from the back to the front. With my darts being closed and my first line drawn, I'm trying to have a mental picture of how the line is going to go by pushing down the crotch height. You know, when you sew up this pattern, that part of the pattern is going to go down, and the front side, your bump is going to take some part down too. So I'm trying to have a mental picture of how the line is going to flow and make the necessary correction. I hope this makes sense. Now that I'm happy with the line of my waistline, I'll go ahead and validate my lines and separate the two blocks. I'm going to draw a line from the point where they were joined so that I'll be able to separate the two from that point. I have separated the two blocks. I'll add in new fresh papers to retrace the lines and add my seam allowance. If you intend to wear this trouser for a longer period, do not forget to add the necessary seam allowance like 1 inch, 1.5 inch around the bump area as your stomach gets bigger by the week. Now that the modification has been successfully done, remember the front and the back pattern were pinned together without the seam allowance. I will advise that you use a block without seam allowance so that you don't get confused. Our pattern is all done and dusted. We'll be trying out this pattern. So I've gone ahead and cut out our pattern, and I'll be trimming off the seam allowance at the top because we are not attaching any band. This is what mine looked like in the overlay. I inserted a clip in the overlay to show that I made mine using this method. So here is the final result. We did a great job. With the modification, our waistline turned out perfect. We must not skip this step, otherwise you'll have a waistline looking like this. If you have any excess at the waistline, that's totally fine. This can be corrected by taking in some inches at the darts or adding the excess to the allowance of your zip. So I'll go ahead and reconfirm all measurements. So that's it for me, guys. If you try this pattern, please tag me on my Instagram. I'd love to see your creation. If there is anything you did not understand in the tutorial, please leave all your questions in the comment section. And if you find this video helpful, please do not forget to leave me a thumbs up, share, comment, and turn on your notifications. And to all expecting moms, I wish you all a smooth and safe delivery. Bisous bisous!